Welcome, everybody. This is a great event tonight. We have the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee agenda meeting of March the 2nd, 2021. It's been a long time since we've seen all our happy faces here since last February 26th. So going on almost a year. Just quickly want to say that I think we have 18 days to spring. Is that right, Mayor Jordan? 18? All right, so I'm going to do the call to order. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. I'm going to do approval of the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. You can just put your hand up or use the raise hand symbol. You can just wave at me if you want to be a mover. I think I got Ryan and Councillor Sharp. Thank you. And now we're going to go to the virtual meeting orientation. So this is the first time we've done this all together. I'm sure many of you are Zoom pros by now, but for those who aren't, there is no fear here. It will be very comfortable. We will make this a comfortable experience for everybody. Just to remind everyone, if you could keep your microphones muted unless you're speaking, that'll help with feedback. And please use the wave your hand wildly at me if I don't catch you on the screen, because I'm looking at all of your wonderful faces. If you want to ask a question or address something that needs a point of order or anything like that, or you can use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. If you click on the participants list, you'll see your participants list will come up to the right and raise hands, and I'll be watching that as well. So those are opportunities to help join in the conversation as we go through the agenda. I have a wonderful group of people here helping me with this first meeting. I've got the clerk, Sarah Kim, here, and in the room we have Director Sweeney. So we'll all be working together to get through this agenda. So does anybody have any quick questions about the virtual meeting? We're being live streamed. This is the first time Grimsby Green is being live streamed as well. Anybody have any questions that they want to ask before we go on with the rest of the agenda about the virtual meeting orientation and any questions about just the operation? Okay, we're all good. So we've got the first item on the agenda is the Niagara Adapts project update. Oh, I have a motion. Sorry, I've got a resolution for the just that the virtual meeting orientation be received. So all those instructions that I just told you, I need a mover and a seconder to receive them. Can I have a hand? I've got Carl and I've got Bruce. Thank you. Did I miss anything else, Director Sweeney, on my virtual orientation?
I just wanted to add really quickly, I did send all of you the procedural bylaw. That is a change from when we last met. We've always maintained a fairly informal environment. As Councillor Bothwell said, we're still going to try to do that, but we do have to add in some of the more formalities with the procedural bylaw. If you have questions as we're going along or you're not quite sure, just ask. We'll work through it together. We're all learning it a little bit, and Sarah Kim is here to help guide us with that as well. So just feel free to ask a question at any point in time if you're not quite sure why we're doing something the way we're doing it. But hopefully we'll find a really good balance of that collaboration and also the structure that we need.
The next item we have on the agenda, thank you, Director Sweeney, is the Niagara Adapts project update with our guest, Michaela Jennings from Brock University. And I just need a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Sharp and Haley, thank you. And I'll move this over to Director Sweeney now to do the introduction and move forward with that item, please.
So Niagara Adapts is a project we've been working on for 2 years with Brock University. There are 7 different municipalities participating in the Niagara region, and the outcome is to have a climate adaptation plan that we can use for Grimsby. Concurrently as well, I do want to also introduce Suzanne Mader, who's also on the call. Suzanne works for the town of Grimsby as well. She's our procurement specialist. And she also is working on some frameworks as well for climate that we'll be seeing coming through. So we'll be looking to sort of pull a lot of these pieces together. But I asked Michaela to join this evening just to share some of what she's been working on, and I've been working on with her as well. It will again be pieces that we pull into other resources that'll be coming forward as well, but it just gives you a sense of some of the conversations that we've been having and what you can expect to see more of along the lines once I know Suzanne also adds some more into it as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michaela, and she's just going to talk to you a little bit about that. Hopefully you all received it in your agenda. I know that chart was quite small and detailed. So if you have any questions, we can pull it up on the screen as well if that's helpful. So I'll give it over to you, Michaela.
Okay, great. So I'm Michaela Jennings. I'm a research assistant with Niagara Adapts. So me and Sarah have been working away on some of the steps for the climate adaptation plan. The big chart is not going to be, in the main plan. It'll be in the appendix. So even though it's intimidating, it's just part of best practices. So I'm actually going to start by talking about the chart and the vulnerability and risk assessment, because that will lead into the goals. So the vulnerability and risk assessment, we started by first looking at climate models for Grimsby. So we took the climate models and we looked at temperature, precipitation, and other variables and how they are going to impact Grimsby 50 to 100 years from now and what's being projected. That information will also be in the plan, the final plan. So looking at the projections, we were able to create 25 impact statements. We chose 25. Usually it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on the municipality, but 25 is just a manageable size for this project. And it allows for us to get a good understanding of how climate change is impacting Grimsby. Once those impact statements were made, we looked at the different service areas in Grimsby and we tried to assess how they were going to be affected. So the X's are direct impact and then the zeros are indirect. So it was just to get an idea of how each service area would be impacted by these impacts. Okay. And then once we had the impact statements, we were able to go forward and assess the vulnerability of Grimsby to these impacts. So we looked at sensitivity, will things get worse, and adaptive capacity, the ability of Grimsby to adapt to these changes. And I could go more into this, but it's quite tedious. So through Niagara Adapts, Grimsby also participated in a study in the fall of 2019. We did a vulnerability assessment with your community, and that's available on Niagara Adapts website. So from there, we did a risk assessment. So risk assessment is just looking at the likelihood and the consequence. So likelihood is just on a scale like out of 5, how likely is the impact going to occur? And then consequence is negligible to catastrophic based on how this impact will have, how it will influence public health and safety, local economy, community, environment, and public administration. So that's kind of what we were going with. And there's a lot of matrices involved in coming up with those numbers and the final score for risk. So taking this vulnerability and risk assessment, we were able to come up with the 6 goals. We based some of them on the higher risk impact statements and what was important with regards to that, but we were trying to create goals that were based on what Grimsby values and what they're working towards with regards to sustainability and climate change. So we looked at priority 6, the environment, as well as the goal to create a sustainability lens in the community. And then we kind of created goals that would, be a bit flexible, as the document, the climate change adaptation plan, is a living document. It's meant to grow as Grimsby moves forward and to be revisited. So there's so much room for expansion, to add, different actions and to improve. So they're just broad, but the action items are what's going to make it, a fuller plan. So we're just looking for feedback on all of this. So if you have any comments about the impact statements, or you think some of them are higher risk or we're more vulnerable in Grimsby, just let us know and we can add that in. And as well, for the goals, it's really important to have feedback from you, just to make sure that we're having a collaborative best practice planning process.
So do we want to ask any questions of the presenter here, Director Sweeney, or do you want to add any comments?
Yeah, if there's questions now among the group, I know it's a lot of content to digest, so maybe some of those questions come at a later time as well. And there will be an actual plan that we're preparing as well that we hope to also be sharing with you and bringing back as well. So this isn't your only kick at this can, but certainly if there's questions among you now, I think Michaela would be happy to hear that, or your feedback as well.
Bruce.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. My questions to Michaela. Can you give us an example of one of these 25 things and just very briefly run through it so that we have a better grasp of what you're looking at?
Yep. So I'll just do number 1 because it's easy. So impact statement number 1 is increased illnesses related to heat stroke due to hotter summers. So each impact statement kind of falls under one of the categories of the climate projections. So you have increased temperature, precipitation, and then other variables. So number 1 goes to directly impact, oh, it is tiny to look at. Public health services, it could affect parks and recreation, a direct impact on emergency services, and then a more indirect impact on business, agriculture, and administrative. Yeah.
Thank you. In that group of 25, through you, Councillor Bothwell, if I may, can you give us an example of what your Niagara, one of these items that may recommend an action?
So that comes in with the goals as well. So for example, we're trying to incorporate existing initiatives as well into the goals and what's being done in Grimsby. So I guess, so one goal that it could work in would be foster climate knowledge and action in the community. So commonly in municipalities, educating the community on how to be safe in these extreme weather conditions would be one action that could be done in the community. As well, it could be, prepare for emergency weather events. So if it's a really hot day out, there may be increased emergencies throughout the community with vulnerable peoples. So just working to strengthen their response could be another action.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda. Oh, I'm going to have to pass a motion, resolve that the presentation from M. Jennings of Brock University be received. Mover and a seconder. Oh, did you wish to speak, Director Sweeney, before I finish this motion? Okay.
I just wanted to thank Michaela. Michaela has been a bit of a savior for me in this. With everything else going on, she's just really done a ton of this work. And I think when you see the final plan, she's put so much into this. And I just wanted to thank her for all that she's doing. And we'll hear more about this as we continue to proceed along with it as well. So thank you, Michaela.
Before you go, Michaela, I have a question, and Director Sweeney as well. Niagara Adapts, this partnership that we've entered into, which is where this report is coming from. This is the second year of that partnership. Is that correct? And are we looking at renewing that? Is there a longer term vision for this relationship, Director Sweeney? And
I can answer that. It is in the second year, so it's rounding the finish corner. I don't think it was designed really with the intention of continuing it, but I suppose that's possible. It was done through a memorandum of understanding for the 2 years. And again, Brock University is sort of the lead. Their sustainability department has sort of been the lead on that. So Michaela, unless you know anything, I don't know that that's been discussed yet, but I suspect there may be an appetite to at least continue some of that collaboration because it has been a really good resource. So I personally hope that's what comes out of it, is that there's some continued connections among these different municipalities, because a lot of what we are doing does bear similarities. So hopefully there'll be something along those lines.
I can say a little. We're kind of exploring what Niagara Adapts is after this point, because a lot of the municipalities will have completed plans within the next month or two, just because they're further along and others are, not as far along. So we're trying to think of how we can be involved in this process after the plan is already created. So we're looking more into implementation rather than creating a plan, because it's already done.
great, much appreciated. Thank you again for coming and providing us with this wealth of knowledge. Thank you. So I'm going to ask now again for that mover and seconder, please. I've got Councillor Sharp. Did you have a question, or are you moving?
I just have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So how far along is Grimsby in this? I know you said some municipalities are further along than others. And what is our plan? What are we doing so far? We're planning so far.
I think Grimsby's at a really good point right now. We have a vision created, so like a vision for the plan, and then we have the goals, and now we have a bit of feedback from you and potentially more. The next step gets a bit harder just because we have to work with the municipal staff and develop action items, and I can't do that from my little corner, so it's just a little bit more work for the municipality to really develop this plan a bit further. Yeah, so we're over the tedious stuff. Now it's just sitting down and getting action items created and then making the document. So we're not too far.
Okay, thanks, Michaela.
Any other questions? Don't want to cut anybody off if they want to capture our speaker here while she's here. Okay, all good. Let's do that mover and seconder again for resolve that the presentation from M. Jennings on Brock University be received. Do I see a mover, seconder? I think I saw Carl and Haley again. Thank you. All in favor? All in favor? Just raise your hand like that. Carried. Thank you. Okay. We're moving now to item 6, the committee priorities, and I'm going to ask that Director Sweeney wishes to speak on those. Start it off.
Yes, I'm just trying to pull up my screen because I'm going to try to share screen, but it seems that I did something with that screen. So this was a year ago that we, oh, sorry, 1 second. Sorry, everybody. I'm just trying to find the screen. Can everybody see that? Yep. So this was a year ago that we worked on, sorry, I'm just going to try to center it for all of you. Hopefully you can see most of that. So a year ago, we did work on these goals and priorities. I did relabel them 2021 and 2022 because in fairness to you, you didn't get much of the other years. So this is just reconfirming what we had agreed to from last meeting. We actually did this with Trevor as well. He was in on that meeting, and something that hopefully we can start to whittle away at some of these pieces. The hope is as well that we can use some of the Niagara Adapts work and also some work that I know Suzanne is doing as well to help further inform maybe where we really want to focus as a group. So I just encourage you to look at this again as you take this away. And the hope is that for next meeting, we can really come back with some more specific priorities that we might want to work towards as we go forward. So any other feedback or comments on that? Hopefully this kind of refreshes it. I thought it was maybe fair to give everybody till the next meeting just because it has been quite a while since I know we've looked at that. I just wanted to bring it back up to the table and hope that maybe, as I said, before our next meeting, everybody has a chance to have a really good look at it again and start to decide some actual action items and maybe even break into smaller groups and start to tackle some of these pieces.
Can't see. Oh, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sharp, I think you'd like to speak.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Bothwell. So one of the things we've been doing kind of informally from the litter removal, waste reduction goal perspective, there's been a couple community members, an old friend I went to high school with, we just met up and he lives in town, and we've been going down to the 40 Mile Creek and cleaning up garbage and bags of garbage, and we got a lawnmower and a shopping cart and like a bunch of stuff out of the creek, bird bath, and like I don't know how some of this stuff gets down there, but we posted on Facebook and we get a few people that came down with us. We just bring garbage bags and we leave them at the top. I send an email over to Sarah Sweeney and we leave them. There's a garbage can kind of beside the road there. We'll leave like 4 bags of garbage there. And so it's been good. It's been, surprisingly, it only takes an hour. Like we set the time from 11:30 to 12:30 and 3 to 4 people come down and we spend 1 hour fairly, and so it doesn't drag out. It's nice that it's in that amount of time, it's manageable, and we accomplished something. So that's been fun, and that I'd like to continue. I know there's the Rotary clubs are doing something. I forget the date, but it's coming up soon, cleaning up all the watersheds. And I'll be involved in that. And if we can get the Green Committee involved, it'd be a good way to get our name out there to some of the other volunteers around the community through Rotary, and a way to get us involved. It's all outdoors, and you can do it individually. Like the closest you have to come to anybody is, you know, picking up a garbage bag out of a box that everyone's sharing. But we're all wearing gloves and stuff, so it's not I think it fits within the framework of the of what's allowed. Anyhow, if there's any comments from other members or from the director, that'd be great.
I'll just make a quick comment. I do have it a little bit later on, that specific project in the agenda, and was going to give some of those details because I think they very much would like some participation. So I can speak to that specific, the Rotary Club at least cleanup as well.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Dave, Councillor Sharp, did you have any other
Well,
question?
Just one more thing is like, because the spring is coming, like we got 18 days. So if we're going to plan to do anything like this, you know, this time of year, you can even do it in your own neighborhood. Like, because the garbage bins and recycle bins get tipped over and then stuff gets buried in the snow. And an hour walking around with a garbage bag and can clean up and help out the environment or just the natural look in the neighborhood. And right now, as the snow melts, there's lots of buried treasure out there, and it can be. I get my kids out. It's something fun to do. We bought them little gloves, and they don't help much, but they just like to come. Anyhow, that's something that I've been doing.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Anybody else? I can't see you all at once, so if you're, I have to scroll around my screen here. Seeing no further questions on that, did you want to move to the next item? Who? Sorry. Bruce, did you have your hand up, Bruce?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Bothwell. And this is sort of related. It is related to
Just like that.
Councillor Sharp. But I've always envisioned the Green Committee. Well, first of all, the people involved in the committee, I think all are hands-on people in helping out keeping this community green by actions or ideas. But in the priorities that Sarah's posted and under litter removal, waste reduction, point number 1 is encourage community participation in waste reduction. And my concept with the Green Committee would be making recommendation to council or to Parks and Rec Committee, or that committee doesn't exist anymore. So the town can start a communication process with the whole community about cleaning up the community. And I've spoken before about ownership of their own waste. Take the Superstore, take Rona, just 2 examples, or the developers on the north side of Casablanca. Do they have a policy, and what actions are they taking to clean up their area and the waste that comes off of their property? That, to me, is the bigger picture of one, of encouraging by the town corporate responsibility, and then encouraging, of course, the individual responsibility. So that was my comment. This is something that I definitely would like to see the Green Committee pursue, is coming up with recommendations so that the town can say, this is what we want to do, or we want to happen in the town. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Anyone else? I don't want to miss anybody. Please speak up if I'm not catching you.
Just me. Me again.
Sarah.
We did have it later on the agenda, but because we've been talking about it, I just wanted to come back to that Rotary Club event. So they have asked for participation. They've asked for municipal participation, but also community organizations. And I think it'd be a great thing for this group to consider participating in if they are interested in. So just a little bit of information about it. They are doing a cleanup on Saturday, April the 24th. All 3 of their clubs, their 2 Grimsby clubs and their Lincoln club, is doing a local cleanup. And their goal is to make this the single largest cleanup event ever planned and coinciding with Earth Day 2021 on the Great Lakes watershed. So they are looking for some people to participate and be sort of designates to help communicate that information. So if there's somebody who's interested from this group, I can put you in contact with the person from Rotary and help communicate it among the group, or even just maybe establish a bit of a group from this Grimsby Green team as well to potentially participate in that event. Is that something that you guys would be interested in doing? And is there anybody who might want to take that on?
Councillor Sharp.
I am interested in it, but I'd like to So I know it's a watershed cleanup, and we've kind of like did a revival of the Friends of the 40. So we're going to concentrate on the 40 Mile Creek, but there's other areas like the Grimsby Beach, the Casablanca Beach, Murray Street Beach, the Pump House Beach. Like I was down there and during the last year, and there's lots to do, and so I'd be happy to help. And but what I would like most is for some of our other members to get involved, and so I'm 100% in. And if anyone else wants to do it, I'd be happy to let them.
Bruce, did you want to speak?
Thanks, Councillor Bothwell. I'm involved with this, coordinating the Grimsby Lions Club primarily, and working with the NPCA. They're going to be coming on, I believe, full stream with this and the volunteers there. I'd just like to mention that this program, that I understand, as I read it, is litter in the watershed, not necessarily just on the lake shore. I know in the past there's been lake shore or shoreline cleanups. This, I believe, is more holistic, so it could be anywhere in Grimsby because all waters flow into Lake Ontario. So people are encouraged to pick a spot, and that could be on the mountain, or that could be in a neighborhood park or a neighborhood street. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Anybody else wish to? Sarah, what is the deadline that you want people to let you know if they're interested in having their name put forward by?
I don't know that there is a deadline. We've offered to help a little bit municipally, even just in terms of what they do with the garbage afterwards, providing some supplies. So I'll share it with everybody after the meeting as well, the date and time. And if there's some people that want to participate, great. You don't have to do it necessarily as a group. You can do it individually. And hopefully some of us do and can give some feedback on that outcome.
So since we're on a live meeting right here and the public could be listening to this or actually go back to the live stream and actually hear about this event, should they also, could they reach out to the Rotary Club? Who can they reach out to if they're interested in participating, members of the public?
I would imagine, yes, they will take any help that they can get. I would say for now, if you want to just call us at the Peach King Center, we can help make sure we pass along this information. I don't want to give somebody's personal phone number just in case. So you're welcome to call us if anybody's listening, 905-945-1288, and we can certainly make sure we put you in touch with the right people.
Thanks, Sarah. Do you want to, now I think you've touched on item 3. Do you want to move on to the next one, the priorities for the next 6 months?
Sure. So that was just the same thing kind of with these, just reviewing our priorities again, what we identified as what we wanted to work on. And so what I'm going to ask everybody to do for our next meeting is just to really look at these priorities, decide on which ones are most important to you. I would say even if you can print this off or however you choose to do that, or do it on your computer, maybe pick the top 3 or 4 that are most important to you. And hopefully we can actually start to walk away from this with some specific goals and some timelines so that we can make sure that we have some successes on this committee. So if that's agreeable to everybody, I think that would be a good way to make sure that at the end of this term, we can look back and feel we really accomplished some of these, something in each of these buckets. Does that sound good to everybody? Or anybody have a different way they would prefer to do it? That's fine as well. Okay.
So you've touched on Earth Day. Did you want to, is there anything more on Earth Day you'd like to speak about, Sarah?
Yeah, so Earth Day as well is something, of course, is coming up Thursday, April the 22nd. It's a great opportunity for us to make the Grimsby Green Committee a little bit more known. So between either participating in a cleanup, but I was also thinking, and maybe we can align it with the priorities that we do, is even just doing some awareness. In the past, I know in talking with this group, I think providing some community awareness was very important. So perhaps we could even do like a 7-day social media campaign where we pick 7 things that community members could do to be more mindful of the environment. So if you can give some thoughts and ideas to that, I'd be happy to help put that together. We could do a little bit of a campaign, give Grimsby Green a little bit of attention around that. It might just be a really great way to get out there and reach out to the community a little bit. So happy to hear your thoughts on that, but it was just one idea of something we could do.
Haley.
Yeah, just thinking along the same lines. I just recently signed up for that Goose Chase. And as soon as I did, I immediately thought maybe we could do something along the same lines, but all environmental stuff to incorporate all of the priorities. So I think that ends on April 5th. So I don't know if there's already another one planned for following that, but it would lead into Earth Day.
What's a Goose Chase?
I can just describe that. Everybody's wondering what's a Goose Chase. So that is an app that we have just launched. The town of Grimsby and our department launched it. It's really cool, and I will send it to everybody so you can see it, especially if you have families. And it's this virtual scavenger hunt that you do, and it's really well done. It's a lot of fun, and I completely agree, Haley. It actually was the next point on my list, so we're perfectly aligned here. It would be an excellent tool that we could use to reach families and children to really do some fun stuff with Earth Day. So I will send that to everybody. Take a look. We would be happy. We're planning on doing one around Earth Day in spring anyway. So think about some ideas and we can definitely incorporate some pieces into that as well. It'd be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Haley. Anything, do you have comments more? All good? That's a great idea. I think so. Everybody's got a whole list of to-dos when we leave this meeting that we have to go do your homework and make sure for the next meeting we come back with all these wonderful ideas. Or if you think of it in the meantime, whip Sarah an email in the middle between meetings, so just in case, so if you don't forget.
Yeah. If I may, Councillor Rothwell, just so for Goose Chase, just to describe it a bit more, one example is it says, and it's all pictures. So you take a picture of three different kinds of leaves and you upload it and you get points, and ultimately whoever gets the most points as their team is going to get some sort of prize, maybe a high five from the mayor or something. I have to talk about that still. But so think about little tasks like that we could ask the community to do. It does tend to be families that do them, but we have some couples doing them of all different ages. So it's been fun that way, but, you know, or take a picture of your recycling, how much you've recycled or how little your garbage is, or, maybe using reusable bags when you're shopping. There's all these different things. And the idea is you do these tasks, you take a picture of it to sort of prove you've done it. And then collectively you're trying to be the points winner. So it'd be a really fun thing because the outcome could be, we could award somebody, maybe the greenest thumb or the biggest earth-friendly team or whatever we could come up with. It would be a really fun thing for Grimsby Green to do. So if you can think along those lines, what are some tasks that we could put input into that? And I will share it as well to kind of inspire some of those ideas. It would be a fun thing for Grimsby Green for sure.
Councillor Sharp.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up or question. This the Goose Chase, are you competing like within your team or are you competing against other teams?
Mm-hmm. Other teams.
Other teams, and so the team gets points.
Yeah.
So I can't compete against my wife. My wife and I are on a team, or can we be on separate teams?
Well, you can choose your team, Councillor Sharp. So you don't have to play with your wife if you don't want to. Typically, what we're finding is households, it's like, especially right now with COVID, right? I think once COVID changes, maybe you'd see groups of children or different dynamics. Right now, it's definitely very household driven. But you decide, you call your team whatever you want and you decide who's part of your team. So if you don't think that she's a good teammate, you can pick.
Oh no, she's a great teammate, but it'd be cool. Like, so I have two boys who are old enough to play, and it's like, so me and Will versus like my wife and Logan, and then we can kind of compete, and then we can spend a day like going out, like trying to find whatever the three leaves and like see who gets more points. Right. So it's still kind of family, but it's we're competitive like that. So
you could definitely do it that way.
Cool. That sounds like fun. I'm definitely gonna look that up.
Anybody else have any further questions about to Director Sweeney?
I have one more. I know I've been talking with Bruce McKenzie as well about doing some tree planting down in Grimsby Beach. Bruce, I didn't know if you maybe want to just touch on the tree planting that's been discussed for that, the one tree in particular that hopefully will happen sometime in the spring as well, maybe even around Earth Day.
Thanks, Sarah, for the information, for the knowledge of everybody on the committee here. A approximate 300-year-old shagbark hickory at Victoria Terrace at Grimsby Beach blew over a few months ago, and it was a significant tree. Its placement and its age, and it was the only shagbark hickory on Victoria Terrace, so we lost a key member there. And so I've chatted with Sharon Porter, a few other neighbors there, have chatted with Sharon and talked about replacing that tree and with a shagbark hickory in its own footprint. The tree blew over primarily because the stump of it was rotten, and we should be able to plant a young shagbark hickory in its footprint. I'm trying to source out shagbark hickory or hickories now, and at the same time, a gentleman on the stakeholders committee and of the Grimsby Beach land use planning study and myself are doing a tree inventory on town-owned land to assist the consultants with this land use planning study. And the resident, Bob Friesen, he's trying to coordinate or wishes to coordinate a tree planting plan for Grimsby Beach. So when I'll be able to obtain the shagbark hickory to plant there, Sarah, I'll let you know. April 24th may be a little bit too early, but it shouldn't be too much once I can source it. I'm checking with a couple of nurseries. They're rare. Hickories are rare trees to find in hickories, or find in nurseries, I should say. But I'm pretty confident we'll get one or some. And then when I do, I'll let you know. And if you want to do something on Earth Day, there's no problem working with you on that. Look forward to it. And I know Sharon and others do. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Bruce. Since you've got all this stuff on the go, and I know it's a little off topic, but is there any exciting stuff happening at Big R Lagoons?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Dorothy, and I did not prompt Dorothy. But there's a package in the mail for you right now. And don't feel left out, Mayor Jordan. You're getting one as well. And I think Councillor Sharp, there's one in the mail for you. So at the lagoons, we pretty well finished off our winter work. We were able to get onto the ice to do some maintenance on the bird nesting structures. And I just sent to the region of Niagara our objectives for this year. Part of our permission for working on that property, which is owned by the region, is for them to approve our project list. And one of the projects is control of wild parsnip. Wild parsnip is related to giant hogweed. It's a toxic plant to the touch, and the region is paid for our exterminator last year to spray the wild parsnip, and this is going to be a multi-year project. And the region just today I received the purchase order for spraying wild parsnip again this year. Wild parsnip is a rare plant in Hamilton and Niagara. And unfortunately, it's in Grimsby. And as far as I know, it's only found at the Big R Lagoons. So we have a program to control it at the lagoons. And my next step, or our next step, because this plant is on the military's property as well, I plan to contact them and to see whether they want to start to do some environmental stewardship on primarily on their 9-acre pond or on the banks around the 9-acre pond. And I was going to start a year ago, but then COVID hit, and I didn't want to hit a wall of silent bureaucracy because no one really knew who was going to be where when. So I'm hoping that we can move on that. We are also researching, have finished completing the research on the Big R family. I've met a couple of their descendants. They've been on that property since 1796. And there's an incredible amount of history of the family involved. So we're putting in another viewing deck and an interpretive historical sign on the bigger family. I hope to have that up in the spring as soon as we can get back onto the land. And we have just had published a article on the wetlands in the Niagara Escarpment Views magazine. So if you're by one of those retail establishments that hand that out, people may want to get a hold of the copy of that article. We're very proud to have Grimsby Wetlands Project highlighted in that esteemed publication. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you, Councillor Bothwell.
And we're almost done. Hawk Watch is when?
Hawk Watch started 3 days ago, March 1st, and goes to May 15th. And the basic COVID protocols is that on the observation tower, there are only a counter and authorized observer allowed on the tower during the day. People down on the ground are asked, of course, to observe COVID protocols. There will not be a Hawk Watch open house on Good Friday this year. Washrooms are closed, and the parking is in the parking lot at the entrance to the conservation area. The gates will not be open to drive into the conservation area. Parking is at the entrance. So today alone, there was several eagles seen, and so the migration, the last 3 days, we had an eagle or more on each day. The migration has begun, but it comes with a slow trickle, and then by the 15th of March, it'll be going well. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. I know it's a little off topic, but I think it all is like a biodiversity network with the stuff that you do and with what we do as Grimsby Green. It all kind of connects into one big ecosystem. So what we do for our environment and nature all impacts the wildlife and the other works that you guys do. So I just wanted to capture some of that stuff. Thank you for sharing. It's much appreciated. And I know I was a little off topic. Sorry, Director Sweeney. You should never let me chair one of these meetings again, okay? Is there anything else that you'd like to add to those priorities, the committee priority items, or can I go ahead with the resolution? Okay, so I have a resolution here, resolved that the committee priorities, I want to make sure no other questions before I move on to the resolution. Okay, resolved that the committee priorities for 2021 and 2022 be received. I just need a mover and a seconder for that. I just need a waving hand. I got a Ryan and I got a Jeff. Thank you, Mayor. So all in favor? I just need lots of waving hands. It's carried. Thank you. So as a segue into that, you better not let me be chair again because I go totally off topic. The next item on the agenda is chair and vice chair. So do you want to, so I'll let, you can speak to that, Sarah.
All right, there's two Sarahs, so you get to pick one. So in our terms of reference, we do have, we still need to choose a chair at some point for this committee. The way it is written in our terms of reference is that chair holds that position for 1 year and then we do look at it again. So you don't have to commit to the entire length of the 4-year term. We were kind of in the midst of getting to that point. If you recall, before we took a break, we were just sort of giving everybody a chance to get to know one another, get to know what the committee might look like before we select a chair. And then, of course, we didn't meet for quite some time. So we still do need to address that. Right now, we've been rotating it with the councillors as acting chair role, but it would be good to actually establish who the chair is going to be as we go forward. So the question, I guess, to the group is, we could do that this evening, or we could do it perhaps for the next meeting, and then we would do it for the remainder of 2021. And then again, we would revisit the process for 2022. Any thoughts from the group as to what you would like to do for that? And then, or perhaps maybe actually first, maybe our clerk can just give us a sense of what that process is going to look like to choose the chair. Is that good, Sarah?
Sure, through you, Chair. It's a very simple process. I'll be asking if anyone wants to throw their names in for the position of the chair. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to speak as to why you would like to chair for this committee, and we'll go around and just do a vote. I guess the question is, would the committee like to do that tonight, or just have the candidates for tonight and think about it and bring it to the next meeting?
Anyone have any comments on that? Anyone just raring to be chair that wants to put their hand up tonight and volunteer? Takers? So think about it seriously, or you have to keep putting up with us till somebody volunteers, and then we'll bring it back at the next meeting. So have a look at that terms of reference, like Director Sweeney said, and think about whether, you know, it's not a huge commitment. And it's actually a fun group, and we're doing some really good stuff. So think about whether this is something that you might want to put on your learning plan, and put your name forward at the next meeting. And then if in the meantime, then we'll bring that forward again at the next on the next agenda, right? And hopefully we'll get that some volunteers for the next meeting. So I think we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, the only other thing I just wanted to mention to everybody is we are going to have some clerk support going on in the meeting. So if the intricacies sometimes of meetings is perhaps what makes you hesitate, you do have support. You have support from the counselors that sit on the committee, from a clerk. It might not be Sarah Kim, it might be eventually another clerk, but there will be somebody here, and then staff as well will support you. So if that is in any way an inhibitor for you putting your name forward, just know that there is good support to make sure that you're able to do those roles comfortably.
Thank you. And yeah, they are great support. So it's not that bad. Okay. So we'll move on to the next item then. I don't think I have a motion for that one because it was just discussion. So Director, if you want to talk about the resignation.
Geez, you think I'd be used to the mute. We did have one resignation from the committee. Selby Meek did indicate for personal reasons she couldn't continue along with the committee at this time. So we do have a vacancy. With the way the terms of reference are written, we don't have to fill that immediately. So the thought among a few of us talking was that it might make sense to wait just a little bit more time as the community kind of gets going again, and then post for that position. But again, that is something that as a group, you're welcome to weigh in on and what you think about that. Any thoughts on that? Would you like to fill it right away? Would you like to allow a little bit more time? Just because we haven't met as much recently, it might be good to get a little bit of momentum going and then post the position, but that's up for discussion.
Councillor Sharp.
Thanks. I'm favorable to post right away. I know some members, not members, I know some community members who would probably be interested. And it's good to get it out there. So maybe we could post it and just have a longer period for the posting, right, which would kind of get both. I don't know how that do you have any recommendations on how long the posting should be active for? I don't want to make it too long and have people wait for a long time to hear, but maybe it's worth doing it now. That's why I'm in favor of doing it soon.
Clerk, is there a length of time we would post it?
Typically, we post it for 3 weeks. I mean, we could extend that for a month, but 3 weeks is usually the norm.
It's 3 weeks, that's the posting, and then there's like some interviews and stuff. And so the process, like we might, if we posted it, I don't know, 2 weeks from now or something, it might take 3 weeks plus a few weeks of interviews. So it might take 2 months before we're actually, so we might be looking, right now is March, April, May. So like maybe we might be voting on a new member in like May or June if we post it now. Or if we wait for a month, then we might be voting in June or July. All right, so like I think that the process does take some time, so it might be better to start now. Or I'm also open to maybe we wait for 4 weeks and we start after our next meeting. And that would be the same, I think, but I don't want to wait too long.
Bruce?
I would agree with Councillor Sharp, seeing we've missed a year of meetings and the new member will be on for less than 2 years. I can't see the reason, if this committee agrees tonight, why a posting couldn't go out before the end of the week, subject to the workload and work plans of the clerk's department. And then if the policy says it's posted for 3 weeks, then I would think that seeing it's only one position, interviews could take place fairly quickly. They can't, again, I don't know what people's workloads are, but you know, ideally we would see a member at the April meeting. Thank you.
Mayor Jordan?
Yeah, I tend to agree with the other two speakers that I would rather get this position filled quickly. And because I certainly know I've had a couple inquiries of people that are really interested, and either of the people that have talked to me would be good additions as well to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to comment on it? I have a motion here that is resolved that the resignation from committee member Meek be received and that staff be directed to proceed with the selection process of a new committee member. If I can have a mover and a seconder to that. Ryan, Bruce. All in favor then of proceeding? It's carried. Okay. We're going to move on to number 9, tree planting.
All right. So I'm going to just share my screen again. Hopefully you had a chance to see this in the agenda. So if you can see this up here. So this was a motion that was brought forward by Councillor Vardy. Can everybody see that? Somebody just give me a thumbs up that you're not seeing pictures of my kids. Okay. So this was a motion brought forward about some Carolinian tree planting investments. So if you haven't had a chance, I'll just give you a chance to maybe peruse it really quickly. But it talks about the staff being directed to provide a report to committee on a number of things, which is something I will be working on. And I wanted to get some feedback from some of you on this. So embarking on an ambitious plan of Carolinian tree planting, replacing trees of a similar variety, incorporating species as part of the site plan landscape requirements and approvals, engaging the residential community in efforts to plant more Carolinian species, engaging town staff to develop ways to partner with the business community in this effort, and allocating a reasonable and robust budget to support this effort. So I can tell you quickly that our budget was passed last night by council, and we have been whittling away at adding more tree resources into that budget, and we have added more again this year. Still not a giant budget, but we have been adding to it each year, and also going to be looking at some grant funding as well to try and help further extend that reach. But looking for some feedback from all of you in terms of what do you think about this? Do you have any thoughts that you think we should be considering? Is there a role that Grimsby Green can maybe also play in supporting some of this, potentially even reaching out to some business community partners? So just wanted some feedback from all of you as to any thoughts on this motion as we're preparing as staff to prepare a report for this.
So, Councillor Bothwell, through you, is this a program for street trees or trees on parks or everywhere, or what's the contemplation here?
That, I guess, gets to be defined a little bit by the staff report. I would think it would be more broad and could be all of those things. But again, looking for your feedback. Do you think it should be all of these things? Would it make sense to start in parks? Obviously, some areas are a little bit easier to tackle than others, but I think it was intended to be a broader focus, but also really looking at some of these sort of Carolinian forest type of areas or sort of clumps of trees as well. So I know it doesn't totally answer your question, but if you have any thoughts on, do you think it should be both, focusing on one area versus another? I do think with this, it will certainly be something that's going to have a bit of a staged process to it. So maybe we would start in one particular area and then keep working towards more areas as well. So to that point, where would be the best place to focus initially?
Through you, Councillor Bothwell, I think it should be wherever you can do it. However, street trees are normally not Carolinian. They're normally special trees that don't have a big canopy, don't have a big root system, because you don't want them to get into the utilities and the sidewalk and heave the sidewalk and that kind of stuff. But I think it should be a comprehensive program for. I'm assuming we maybe don't have a wholesome program. Maybe it needs to be embellished, improved, but I think it should be for street trees, parks, anywhere where you can find a place for trees. There should be maybe some private involvement, some fundraising. And we should try to help people. Like right now, I'm looking for a lot of trees to plant on my property, and I wish there was a catalog or a reference that I could go to and find a reasonable program that I can plant a lot of trees without having to do an awful lot of research. Maybe we could do a reference, help people find trees. I think many of these programs are very cheap. Anyways, those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Carl. Sarah, Carl raised some good points about making it easy for people to get lists of what are the Carolinian species, where they can be sourced, that kind of stuff. Is that within the scope of this project?
I would say it definitely can be. We actually found a really fantastic resource from NPCA that has a whole list of Carolinian trees, but even just other plantings, even aquatic plants. They have quite a list of things. So I think it would be great to spin off of this motion, and maybe something that this committee could take on, as well as promoting that and letting people know what's available. Might even be neat to be able to get into some of the local businesses like the nurseries that do exist, and would they help promote some of that as well? So there are some pieces that we can pull from that to use to do some campaigning and awareness around that for sure.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes, thank you. I have a question. I have a two-part question. The first one will be to Director Sweeney. What's the budget for tree planting?
I have, it is about $40,000 in mine, and there is also, which focuses more on parks and open space. And Public Works also has a budget. I don't know that number. I could come back to that. I could bring that back to this group.
And so the question is, like, how much of that is, I mean, if you have 40,000 for parks, how much of that is like needed for parks and like for specific work throughout the year? And then how much is available for us to come up with some potential plans?
That I don't have a specific figure for you. We did add, I think, about $13,000 this year. Some of that would go into parks, but I think, it would depend on what we want to do with that. So, and then to pull from some other spots too.
So then my question for information to the committee would be, approximately how much does it cost to plant a tree? And I know that probably differs based on the age of the tree or like the size of the tree. I think you can get like saplings for 10 cents or 20 cents a tree, but they're this big. But then, I mean, I bought apple trees, bare root. They were like 2 years old or something. I paid $19 a tree or something, but I had to buy 5 trees to get that. And they had sugar maples at this nursery, and but the sugar maples were taller. They were 8 to 10 feet or something. But so then, who would plant them? And is there cost to that? Because for committee, if we're thinking like maybe we could do something, it's difficult to come up with like plans without having any framework for like what we could do. Because I mean, I presume that like some trees that are a little bit older and that have to be planted need an equipment or a truck or something planted by staff. They might have a cost of $400 to $500 a tree or more. I don't know. Like I'm making these numbers up, but and then others, like I said, those saplings we might be able to plant for 25 cents a piece plus some volunteer time. So is there any way that we could get just a little bit of information, or even we could just discuss it right now? Maybe some committee members know more about this than I do. Is there anyone who has any input to that?
So Sarah, is this something that's going to go into the report?
Yeah, so we'll be looking to put a variety of things in the report. So Councillor Sharp is right on a number of fronts. Certainly in parks, we don't tend to plant saplings. We would plant a larger tree. But I do think saplings could be a really good opportunity for a community outreach program. And we might be able to find some partners in the community that would even sort of, extend again our dollars and do something. So one thing maybe for this group to think about, would that be worth doing? Getting, see if we can get our hands on quite a variety of saplings. We do know some local nurseries that do that and do more of, I've seen it where, you subsidize the cost even of a sapling, not very expensive, and it's more of a residential planting. And then you leave more of the larger trees in parks. So that might be, if that was something this committee liked the idea of, we could maybe look at exploring something along those lines. And you can make it pretty scalable, right? Especially with saplings, you can do quite a bit with not a lot of money and then have that residential component. So that was one idea that can be looked at.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Bruce?
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Help me stay on the path here. I think the motion, from my perspective, is will the town adopt the philosophy or the practice of planting only native Carolinian species in the town of Grimsby? That's one issue. I would highly recommend the answer to be yes, and that would apply across any town department involved in planting trees. That's parks, it's public works, and it's planning. And I think the planning department here sometimes is forgotten because they're the ones that are going to stipulate to developments what is going to occur on that property. I think in the long run, and the points that Sarah just brought up about size and Councillor Sharp brought up, very, very important points to discuss. And I welcome to see a report from staff. And I would like to see that report, whenever it's done, come back to this committee before it goes to council. And I think in the long run, one of the recommendations of the report, and I'm just saying could be, is that the town hire a consultant to come up with a tree and a shrub planting plan for the town. And that plan would contain a list of trees and shrubs or plants that would be applicable or suitable for the town. And Carl brought up a good point about some trees are good street trees and some trees are not good street trees. And that would be part of the report, or on this list. There would be a sub list. Here are the trees that are good for dry, open areas in parks. Here are the trees that are good for street trees. And the question of planting landscape-sized trees versus saplings or seedlings is very, very important. And I'm just going to speak from my own experience for a second. Planted a lot of small trees at the Grand Old Oak property 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where the soils are probably the best soils in the town of Grimsby. And those trees have done beautifully and they didn't need irrigation. And then I've planted trees on the waterfront trail as part of the Lions group tree planting project there, and at the Grimsby wetlands, and at 50 Point. In the last three areas, all those areas, the soils are highly disturbed. And it's very difficult to grow a young tree, and they all require pretty well irrigation to keep them going, because what you're planting trees in is subsoil that's been brought up to the surface during construction. And those kind of things have to be considered, I think, by a professional in terms of putting a report together. The greatest leverage I think this committee has is to convince the town to promote Carolinian Grimsby to the private landowners in the town. I'm talking to the homeowners. And Carl, you hit it right, the nail right on the head. And Sarah, you know, the agencies like the NPCA, Carolinian Canada, they've already done the groundwork here. They can give you the recipe book. And the town needs to say to the homeowners, plant a tree on your property. The town will plant a tree on the road right away in front of your property, but that's just one. We need to see the town encourage homeowners to plant more trees and provide advice as to what kind of trees to plant. And that, I think, is quite reasonable to plan for. And agencies, I think, like the NPCA, I suspect that they would be very happy to step up to the plate, or Carolinian Canada, or Land Care Niagara. There's groups out there willing to jump in. So I've said a lot, but to go back, Carolinian species for any of those three departments become the name of the game from now on. No more Norway maples in Grimsby. We've had enough. And then to have a plan prepared by a consultant as to How do we move ahead? What's the species list? So thank you for the time.
Thanks, Bruce. I'm going to let Mayor Jordan next, please.
Thank you, Chair Bothwell. What I really think Carl and Bruce are definitely onto something, because we can certainly take the leap of planting Carolinian forest species throughout the town, and I understand it's not easy for staff to quite often to source appropriate sized Carolinian forest species. But that being said, I think to make it, certainly to start out, is if we could add the species that are found in the Carolinian forest zone, but are not exclusive to the Carolinian forest zone, and then move in as we are able to source other appropriate street trees to source it into exclusive Carolinian forest trees. I just realized that Carolinian forest trees, because it's such a small zone in Canada, it's very hard. A lot of nurseries don't specialize for this small zone of southern Ontario, the Niagara Peninsula essentially, and down in Essex County. So I think if we have that type of thing where we can work into trying to secure more of our species, and maybe even as far as getting seedlings or smaller plants, is having something like up at Southward. I know Sarah and I were speaking about it, about using an area there kind of as a nursery, tree nursery, to grow some of these smaller varieties or seedlings, to allow them to mature so they can be transplanted down the road. And it could also be an educational plot for the Carolinian forest and Carolinian forest species. I think that would go well on the way to getting the public up there to see some type of trial garden, and so they can see the different varieties and to see how they work, and actually see what the tree looks like, and say, hey, like I like the red bud, or I like a butternut or something like that, or a fringe tree, and just to move that way. So I think that's something where we can work that way, but I think it's really it's us stepping up as a community to make that jump and move to Carolinian trees. I really think we'll be the only certainly the only municipality in the Carolinian forest area that's moved forward that way, and ultimately to move forward with a proper ecosystem, with the Carolinian forest being the most diverse ecosystem in Canada, I think, and we live in it, and it is under threat. I think this is a great way where it's good for everyone. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Just a quick question, Sarah. Does the Vineland Research Station out there in Jordan have any background in this? Because I know they have a walking trail through a forested area there. I just wondered if they have any experience with the Carolinian, or could be a supporter or partner to us.
Through you, Chair Bothwell, I don't know, but definitely that's a great contact point that we could certainly reach out to and see what they have. It seems to me that they might. I don't know, but we could certainly reach out. They might be an interesting source to do some partnership work potentially.
Yeah, I was reading they've got some heritage tree trail or something. I haven't been through it myself. I don't know if anyone else has, but it'd be great if we could reach out and see if they have any experience or are looking at a free help with it. Just an idea. Councillor Sharp.
Thanks. So to follow up on Mayor Jordan's point, it's a cool idea to plant our own nursery, and it's cool to think of, like, to show residents this is a tree you could have, and it's literally the tree that they could come and have and buy. But there might be a little more work to that than we want to take on. But maybe there's a possibility for us to compel some of the local nurseries to grow Carolinian species by making an agreement to buy the Carolinian species from them. so a nursery who is currently growing XYZ type of trees, because of like the demand for them, if we could approach them and maybe there's already a nursery who does have some of these type of Carolinian trees, and we could suggest to them, hey, we would buy these type of trees if you grew them, and we would pay this much money, and maybe that would compel them to grow those trees, right? And maybe we might have to wait a few years before we get some mature trees, but if we're looking at a long-term plan for Grimsby, and this might be a great opportunity to, I don't want to say partner, but like to have a relationship with a local nursery who would benefit from growing these trees, and then we would benefit from having these trees that are not necessarily available in most commercial nurseries. But the other point I want to make, I made this at council when we passed the resolution, because I support the resolution, and I support the native trees and the Carolinian species, but I discussed an exemption for community gardens, and it was relation to fruit trees. Some of them are not native. I know there's a pawpaw tree, and I know there's some maybe are native, but we have also a heritage here of like farming and fruit, and so I know we have only a few small community gardens and things, but imagine if we ever got a big community garden going, like somewhere, and with some real dedicated volunteers who wanted to take like some land and actually use it, maybe through an organized group, like, and maybe they would plant some fruit trees and harvest them and take care of them. I mean, it's work. Haley knows from some of the amount of work it requires to take care of a garden like this, and I don't want to preclude or prevent people from, say there's a food bank, the GBF, and like a group decides like we want to grow some food, and we find a parcel of land that they can use, and I mean, we're talking dedicated volunteers to do this kind of stuff, but I think that there may warrant an exemption for fruit trees. And I'm not saying that we don't want to try to plant certain brambles and stuff that are native, right? But when we have this discussion, or if we make a recommendation, I'd like to include some language on the community gardens and a potential exemption.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Director Sweeney, anything more to add to the item?
I don't think so. Just if there's any other further feedback, anything that you think is sort of a caution, or anything else you think we should consider as we're developing a bit of a staff plan and a report. I do think there'll be pieces of it that definitely come back this way. I think there's some really good action items that we can take out of this and maybe weave into that sort of shorter term priority setting and go after some of these pieces. I think there's a lot of potential. So thanks for all the feedback.
Any other questions before I move the resolution? So I have the resolution here, resolved that the discussion in regards to Carolinian tree planting be received. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mayor Jordan? Carl, thank you. All in favor? Lots of hands. Carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Great Lakes Watershed Clean Up project.
I don't think I have anything further to say to that one. I think we kind of covered that earlier when we were talking about the cleanup. So I guess I'll leave that one as it is, and I'll share that information accordingly with all of you.
Thanks, Sarah. Did anybody have any questions on that? So I have a motion resolved that the Great Lakes Watershed Cleanup project be received, and it was just the information that was verbally given, which Director Sweeney will circulate to us, correct? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? I've got Bruce and I've got Councillor Sharp. Thank you. All in favor? Just need a lot of wave hand. Thank you. Carried. Okay. Now, normally on this agenda, we have a new business. So anything that's related to the committee or anything that anybody might want to add as an item or that you'd like the director to be made aware of, this is your opportunity. I also, Chantel, if you're there, we haven't really had a chance for you to speak. If you have anything, if you can, if you wish to say anything or comment, Councillor Sharp.
I don't want to take the floor right away. If anybody else has anything, I'm happy to wait.
Bruce?
First of all, it's a matter of administration, I guess, Councillor Bothwell. I'm just trying to put names of emails together with members' names, because sometimes their names are not in their emails, and I know mine is not. So first of all, I'd like to ask if we can just go around the table, and if your email isn't your name, could you say what your email address is, so I know if I want to communicate with Ryan, I don't end up talking to SPI.
I think what we'll do, Bruce, is we'll have the director can circulate that with the email addresses with the names that apply to each of them, and then if there's any change or whatever, we can make sure that gets circulated through the director, just because there may be some confidentiality issues there. So, but we'll make sure that that gets circulated to all members, so we know which name goes with which email address. That make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. No problem.
And I had two other requests.
Okay.
If I may. First of all, I would like to recommend or suggest that each department head of the town present themselves to this committee and tell the committee what their department is doing in terms of being green. What practices are they following now? Because if they're already doing something, then we don't have to bang our head against the wall trying to convince them when they are going to come back and say we're already doing it. And that would, I think, involve every department head, because every department uses energy or plants a tree or makes plans how other people are going to affect the environment. I'll use an example: planning department and low impact development. How do those two entities combine? So I'll leave it like that. And also, a year ago or so, it was suggested, and I'm not quite sure because I don't have it in front of me, the priority report, a reduction in grass cutting. This is now the 1st of March. I don't know whether there's been any energy spent on planning on a cutting of a reduction in grass cutting by the town, whether it be public works or parks. But I would like to see something come forward so that it comes into effect this year. Thank you.
So thank you, Bruce. So Sarah, is there a way we can solicit from each of the department heads what they're doing? Like maybe develop a questionnaire or something that we can circulate, or I don't know if the other option is having them come to committee, but I think perhaps circulating a questionnaire that we can frame one or two questions to them as to what their initiatives are. And what do you think?
What I would recommend through you, Chair, is I know there is some corporate work being done right now in a bit of a rolled up strategy, and I would say that that's a good place to start. in terms of where some of the corporate priorities we're going to be and where we're going to be working from. So and that will be coming to this committee. So I would suggest we just start there, and that might answer some questions, and then maybe we'll be more specific as to what questions we have from there. So if we can entertain that, I think that might help answer some questions and help guide where we'd want to go.
Thank you.
As for the grass cutting, we will definitely, we can definitely take a look at some of that. It might be something where we do in pieces and start to, roll out different sections and what are we going to do and how we're utilizing some of those spaces. So we can definitely do some work and discussion on that as well.
Thank you.
To that point, I guess if there's specific areas that are thought of, we can certainly have that conversation as well, sort of that broad approach, but also if there's low hanging fruit that are easy, happy to have that feedback and have that conversation.
Right. I'll follow up with you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Sharp?
Yeah, thanks again. I had two items which I think would be new business. The first is a logo. If the committee, it'd be nice to have a logo. Like I was just drawing things. Years ago I made these temporary tattoos. They were cheap, and I paid they were 16 cents each or something. But so I was thinking, well, wouldn't that be cool? And so I was drawing a tree and just some simple stuff. But if we were to have a logo, would be cool. But how would we implement that? Maybe we could do a logo contest, or maybe we could do just some logo ideas that we would vote on. If we have any thoughts from the committee, I don't want to make this my own. Does anybody have any ideas whether we need a logo or what a logo could look like, what our name could be on that logo? I really appreciate some input. Then I have one more after this, but I'm just waiting.
I'm going to just offer a little bit of input on it. One way to go might be as well to do a bit of a slogan. So even thinking about what your sort of priorities are over the next 2 years, rather than getting to a formal logo, where you may have to go through some process and details, you could also go after a bit of a slogan that sort of represents what you're wanting to do and just sort of use that slogan as well. So that might be another way that's a little bit simpler. It's kind of the same thing, but it's more of a slogan. Sometimes it's a bit more of a call to action, might have some words and might be something that the committee might be able to use a little differently that way. So just an idea.
Any other thoughts?
Did you have a second question, Councillor Sharp?
I do, but if there's no other input from the committee members.
Well, I think we'll leave it. Are we going to bring it back to for further discussion, the logo concept then?
Yeah, I think we could discuss it again. I'll give you one example. I know with Active Grimsby, Bruce might remember he was part of that as well. We did some wristbands, doing some reflective wristbands, and we developed a bit of a slogan that they were going to use. And it was just sort of, again, a couple of words that are sort of a call to action that represent a little bit of what you are. But we can bring a little bit of information on that and discuss how you'd want to use it. I think you just really want to think about how are you using it, what are you using it for, and then what's the best tool to use.
So I think what we'll do, Councillor Sharp, is we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting, and Sarah can come back with a couple of thinking points on that one and action moving forward for the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, great idea.
Do you have something
the other one I wanted to bring up was I've been talking to some residents about backyard chickens, and is that a green thing? It's got to end up somewhere, but it's not a public works thing, that's for sure.
I don't think it's on our mandate.
I'm pretty sure planning is
yeah.
I think, because I believe it sort of falls more under the sort of bylaw segment, and I'm seeing nods. So yes, I would say
maybe
something direct to planning.
Well, I think about it in I frame it in the realm of homesteading and like self sustainability, and I think that kind of at least could give this committee some input towards it. I mean, we are a division of what was the planning, or no? Are we planning or parks? Or but here we are giving advice for planning to plant trees and how to use natural space, and maybe I understand that might be the best place for it is that planning. So point taken, but that is something that we want to see. I want to see soon, and you guys can expect to see from me is a backyard chicken discussion at least, and potentially maybe like a permit you pay for. You can have like 2 or 4 chickens, like they're basically pet chickens.
Okay, Councillor Sharp. Okay, Councillor Sharp. Thank you. We got the point. We've taken that note down. Bruce, I think, has a comment to make. Bruce?
No.
All good? Okay, you're all good? Okay. Anyone else have any further new business items that they want to have on the agenda or just noted? Okay. All right. If that's it, and there's no further questions, which I don't see, our next meeting is scheduled for March 31st, 2021. Will be available through electronic participation, again by Zoom. Sarah, is there anything else that I've missed?
No, I just wanted to touch on, so now we've had our first meeting. We'll try to fall back into our regular meeting time, which is supposed to be the last Wednesday of the month. So hopefully that's where we'll continue on going forward. So we are going to have a second one in March just to fall into that regular pattern. And hopefully that still works for everybody.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to say thank you everyone for coming out. It's really appreciated that you made the time, and to see everyone on Zoom, and looking forward to spring in 18 days and some of the initiatives that we've got ahead. Don't forget your homework and come to the next meeting with some great ideas for Sarah. So with that, I'm going to say the meeting is adjourned, and thanks everyone again very much.